It's the little things that make them feel more human again, and they are so used to being dehumanised and so used to being marginalised. Sometimes it is a couple of scatter cushions on your sofa, or So basically SIFA Fireside primarily is a main drop-in service for single adult homeless individuals. So it's over 25s, and when we say single adults, we're talking about singles and childless couples. So we will pick up probably the majority of people that are sleeping in the city. We do a lot of practical assistance because people do present in crisis, but our main focus really is actually preventing crisis from occurring or from sustaining recovery once we've got people into accommodation and settled. We were a key referrer around people under Operation Fort, which was the largest modern slavery prosecution recently in European history. We actually put a lot of the referrals to Hope for Justice for that case came from SIFA Fireside. So there's a lot going on here really. We do language classes, there's cooking classes that go on. We work in partnership with probably about 120 now commercial sector partners, and we've got about 70 to 80 voluntary sector partners, all delivering services or supporting us through various means from this base. So it's quite, for a small organisation, we do pack quite a big punch. I think it's still quite early days with Housing First. I think everyone's trying to find their feet a little bit with it. But I think the absolute linchpin for Housing First is not the accommodation, it's the support that's put around the accommodation. That has to be absolute premium quality. If providers are going to offer units, then those units need to be of a sufficient quality. I know it sounds like I'm saying something that's like, teaching grandma to suck eggs, but you'd be amazed at how many providers feel like the unit is the thing, and then and it's a minimum, and then clients don't end up sleeping there because they haven't got anything in there, or it feels a bit. Housing First is focused on a lot of people that are quite entrenched and have had a long history of perhaps rough sleeping. It's a massive transition for them to go into a property. So they need to know that there's everything in place for them, because it's very easy for them to go back out and rough sleep. It's not something they're going to think twice about. So it has to be done right. The basics might be there, like the fridge and the cooker and things like that, but is there a nice, set of bedding? Is there cutlery in the cupboards? I don't know, there's a part of me that always thinks actually before the client moves in, if they go into the property, it's all already there. How much does that make you feel valued as an individual? It's the little things that make them feel more human again, and they are so used to being dehumanised and so used to being marginalised. Sometimes it is a couple of scatter cushions on your sofa, or
It's a financially sustainable way for us to be able to make that remit, infinitely wide. Whereas if you are a landlord that wants to do one Housing First flat and it's your first investment, you're going to be so restrictive around what you're prepared to accept and what you're not. So I'm really hopeful that the way we're approaching it allows us to have that compassion to give them as many chances as they need.
That's what really works about the Housing First model, is that I know that we talk about Housing First and we say it's a tenancy for life, but a tenancy agreement at the end of the day is a contract, and you breach the contract and you can be evicted. So there's got to be a bit of flex. You can't just say tenancy for life. It's got, to me, and it's just my view, but there's got to be a bit more flex than that, and that kind of higher tolerance of not just, okay, you breached your tenancy agreement, so now therefore you're going to be evicted. It just first. It's not. It kind of goes against the spirit of what Housing First is set up to do. Where we can support as well is what we'd want to do is to try and help that individual to be integrating within their community. So we can be like a bit of a bridge sometimes between that. So if they've got all of that information and we know where they're placed, we can help them as well with encouraging them to sort of register with their GP locally and all of that kind of thing.
From our perspective, this organisation could also be the first opportunity that we might get to know if there's anything wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're not likely to tell us.
No.
They're likely, like you say, to just sort of sneak off and probably come back to where they're comfortable.
Yeah.
And then you might ring us and go, guys, they've been in your house for the last 7 days.
Yeah.
They can't find this, they can't work that, that's gone. So having that, I think building this relationship would be really important for us.
Yeah,
so that we've got that kind of feedback loop 360 that enables us to keep an eye on people, you know, wherever they are, whatever they need. Really.
Yeah.
As a landlord, we present a tenancy in terms of we present a tenancy to the occupant and Howard works with them and puts that tenancy in place, for example. The services work with the client community on that sort of move-in piece. We then become the sort of first line contact for them if they need anything on the property front. What I'm saying to Carla, the reality is that if they've got a network, they're probably going to come over here before they're going to talk to us.
So just met with Carly, who's the CEO from Fireside, SIFA Fireside. And
SIFA or SIFA?
SIFA, sorry, SIFA. I kept on saying that wrong. I'm always blown away when I meet these people, just in terms of the passion and the level of knowledge and skill that you can see they put into the everyday in terms of trying to turn people around. All it does every time we do that is just fire me on board more. If possible. Fireside. Yeah, I get it. Genuinely advise me to build them more, because I think when cool people like this are involved and want an on side and wanting to make a difference, then it just makes it all the more likely that we'll find a really good solution. And every time you have these conversations, you find a little something else, a new little connection that might make a difference to a whole new different sector. We've just been talking there about construction and for homeless people coming into work again, construction being a real good opportunity, and then I've got links with On the Tools and some other people I've been speaking to around jobs in construction. So you just start to pull the jigsaw pieces together. So yeah, really interesting. Sorry, Dave.
So what we were doing here with SIFA and Fireside, apparently, I didn't know this used to be two separate organisations. What was it, 30 years ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
30 years ago they started, and then 11 years ago they merged to become SIFA Fireside. So we're in Digbeth, which is pretty close to the city centre in Birmingham. There's a number of providers and organisations around here that support homelessness, so charities and other organisations, and ultimately these guys run a drop-in centre. So for street homeless or people that are already in accommodation that have got homelessness challenges, all sorts of stuff. You can see your GP here, you can get access to services. I noticed that they've got a vet here, for example, so if you've got a pet or an animal, you can bring it in here. They've got a vet on call that will kind of look after it. We were here to talk about the Housing First programme and where we think we're going to fit into that. And I wanted to understand the journey of a client that would come through a centre like this and be signposted into one of our properties. It was interesting what she said about specifically what we should consider in the property, right?
Yeah.
So she was talking like simple things making a small difference to people. She mentioned scatter cushions, right, and simple knives and forks and cutleries and things in there that are going to make them feel like they're not being institutionalised.
Valued.
Yeah, that they're valued, they've not been marginalised. So that was good actually, because it's not necessarily something we might have considered as early on in the process, right? Something I did get out of it was needing to have a wide tolerance as a social landlord, right? That's how this is going to work, and they adopt this principle of people having multiple chances and accepting that likely they're going to get back into challenges, but you've still got to be there to support them and help them through that. And that, I think that came across as something she advised us to do as landlords, is make sure that we give people, you know, all those chances and don't move straight to doing what a normal landlord would do if something doesn't go right. So
yeah, I think we've got a lot to learn, that's evident, but some really good people to help us along the way. So.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, great.